I'm Marcel, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. We are in August, and we are doing Women in Translation Month. So, Women in Translation Month is something that was very much established as sort of a phenomenon due to Biblio, which was a book blogger back in 2019. And in 2019, she also asked everyone to send in their favorite books by Women in Translation, that is, books written not in English by women. And she created a list. And if you, dear viewer, tell me in the comments what your favorite Women in Translation books are, I am going to go through all of the books on her list from 2019. Now, I have a bit of a confession. I've been struggling now with book 80. That was Alejandra Pizarnik, Extracting the Stones of Madness, Poems 1962 to 1972, and Adeline Bonn, The Little Girl on the Ice Floe, which was on spot 79. I've ordered both books, but they have not come, and therefore we are just going to move on, and I'm going to talk about those books in a later video. So on spot 78, going backwards, we have Tokyo Ueno Station by Miri. This is, the book opens about a homeless sort of camp outside of Ueno train station. And we follow the main character who lives at this homeless camp. So there are two stories here going parallel. One is about the day-to-day, that is this homeless man, and how he observes everything that is going on in the train station. And the other one is, how did this man end up being at this homeless camp, and everything that he sort of experienced due to not only the class struggles that he experiences in his life, but also the tragedy and trauma that he experiences in his life. So there are sort of two things that this book sort of discusses, and that you as a reader can sort of talk about, which is either how people who are homeless very often have some kind of trauma connected to it, and the other one is looking at sort of the culture that we have through the eyes of an outsider. Now, I have a confession regarding to this book. In all of the sort of synopsises I've read about this book, the main character is described as a ghost, like a literal ghost. And I have to admit that when I was reading the book, I thought that he was just invisible. Because, you know, we don't like to sort of acknowledge the poor people. So I thought that it was more symbolically invisible instead of actually invisible. So someone please tell me that you've made the same mistake as I have. On spot 77, we have Swallowing Mercury by Wioletta, and this is a coming-of-age story about childhood, growing up in Poland in the 1980s, when Poland was a communist state. So it was at the end of the communist era. And one of the things there were two things I absolutely really enjoyed about the book. Number one was the fact that except for certain specific scenes in this book, and they weren't long, they didn't sort of take up a lot of sort of space in the book, but I enjoyed the fact that this country being communist didn't actually play a large part for the main character, because that makes sense that when you are 5, 6, 7 years old, you don't really care if your country is communist or capitalist. What you care about is, what do you have access to? What are you forced to do? What are you allowed to do? And the second thing that I enjoyed about the book is this is wonderful writing. It really is a believable writing, in the sense that you feel like you are talking to a child who is telling you about their life, except that it's coherent. So it's not like actually sitting down, but the language that she uses is very much sort of in essence, in empathy with the way a child would describe their own life. So, Miri is from Japan. Wioletta is from Poland, as I mentioned. And on spot 76, we have the Mexican Valeria Luiselli and the book The Story of My Teeth. So this is a story of a man who grew up in poverty, became a very wealthy auctioneer and someone who owns a lot of sort of antiques, and to set his teeth in order, because they're not in order due to him growing up in poverty, he needs to sell his famous teeth that he has sort of bought during his sort of time on the job as an auctioneer. So he is selling his very famous teeth to be able to buy his own teeth. And I love an allegorical book, and this is very much an allegorical book. And allegorical books are brilliant, but also kind of scary, because whatever you think the teeth stands for says more about you than anything else. So the teeth can be a comment on class, about culture, about education, about society, all that good stuff, because it's an allegorical book. So the teeth are just allegorical aspect of something. She plays a lot with magical realism in a way which isn't that sort of weird, considering that it is an allegorical book. And this being an allegorical book isn't just something I'm making up. It's something that sort of the book actively plays with, where the main character, Sanchez, creates a style of auctioneering that he calls allegorical auctioneering, where he tells a story of the things that he is auctioning away. And it has this sort of... each tooth in the head of a man is worth more than a diamond. So the writing is absolutely brilliant in this one. And please tell me what you think the teeth stand for in that book. On spot 78, we have the Finnish author Sofi Oksanen with the book Purge. And this story starts with a farm lady on her farm, seeing a young girl entering her farm, asking for refuge or place to stay. And then throughout the book, both of their backstories are revealed in sort of scene for scene, and the way those two's backstories sort of play on each other. And they are talking a lot about Estonia, and a lot about the connection between Estonia and the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union and Finland, and therefore Finland and Estonia. So it's a wonderful tapestry of how sort of different people have been able to do different things due to the connections on sort of skirts of the Soviet Union, and how things are both very similar but also different between Finland and Estonia. It is a dark book. One of the characters experiences being forced into prostitution, and there is a lot of SA in the book. But it's not shock value, it's just simply that is the background. That is one of the things that you sort of is happening to these people. And one of the things I actually enjoyed is that it, among other things, discusses how most people who will be forced into doing prostitution will be sort of kidnapped at a time when they are migrating. So people who are migrating are the people who are most at risk to be kidnapped and, in lack of a better word, sold into prostitution. And that is something the book actually discusses. So I thought that was sort of a wonderful detail in the way the book sort of talks about what these two characters have been through. Then I read The Bridge of Beyond by Guadeloupean Simone Schwarz-Bart. And this is about women in Guadeloupe who have a background from being slaves, are now free, are trying to establish themselves in Guadeloupe. And we are following 3 generations. So the grandmother, the mother, and the child. And just them trying to figuring out, what does this mean? What is this? What is this life? What is our role here? What are we supposed to do? And there again, it's something about the incredibly lush language to Simone Schwarz-Bart that makes it such an interesting journey to follow in how these 3 women are navigating their life or not navigating their life, to try not to speak too much within the card, and how sort of the bridge of the beyond is, well, what is beyond this chasm that we are trying to sort of move over, and how so many different peoples are reacting differently to this situation that we now are in. And the last book that I am going to talk about in this video, it's book on spot 73, and it's The Unit by Ninni Holmqvist. And this is a book by, she's Swedish, and it's a speculative fiction in a world very similar to Sweden and yet very different, where your purpose in life is determined by you having children and having connections. And if you do not have connections and have children, you are sent to the unit at the age of 50 if you're a woman and 60 if you're a man, because there's very little likelihood for you to have children at those ages. And you are spare parts for the rest of society, because you have no other usefulness for society in a situation where, well, you don't have any connections to anyone else. And when they talk about connections, they very specifically talk about partnership and children. And I so loved this world. And when I'm saying loved, I didn't say, oh, I want to live there. But it was such a fascinating idea for a world. And what I enjoyed most about the book, because we are following Dotta, from the time she turns 50 and is sent to this unit. And the book mainly focuses about her emotional journey, but I've mainly focused on, well, what is this world? Why is things the way that they are? How did they end up with what? Okay, if you don't have children by the age of 50, and then it's sort of a bit unsure if it actually would have been enough for Doctor just to be in a committed relationship. Would that have saved her from being sent to the unit? How did the society end up doing this? They have such a focus on the usefulness of it. You're not useful if you don't have children or connections. And therefore, we are sending you here to be spare parts, because then you can be useful. And Sweden is a social democracy. And what I also enjoyed about the book is that the world is discussed from both perspectives. It's discussed both from sort of, if we live in a collective culture, then you need to be useful to the collective. At the same time, there's something about the collectiveness that is very capitalistic, and the focus on usefulness is very sort of capitalist oriented. So you can sort of look at it through both lenses, and then that's a good book when you can sort of see it from sort of more than just one perspective. And the setting was so interesting to me. How did we end up here? Why are they doing it like this? And just I wanted more of the world, and I wanted more of the world building. But yeah. That was the next 6 books on the list, and I hope that you now will leave me a comment on your favorite books by women in translation.